Hi, I'm Reb from RebsFabStash, and I'm going to show you how to do the square and an oval rope bowl. Now, in my last video, I talked a little bit about getting cord and where to get it and how much better it is to buy clothesline cord or rope versus buying the macrame cord. Now, I originally bought about 30 colors of macrame cord because I wanted to use macrame cord initially because it was less expensive. The problem is the stability, and I showed this kind of in the last video. Macrame cord, you know, it's pretty flimsy. And the other kinds of cord you get, whether it be clothesline rope, which this is, much sturdier, and you'll see this makes a really cute bowl. And this one here, I put this really fun fabric in the center, and then I used kaif strips and did those on the outside, and then I made a kaif fabric bowl. Flower. So this was a lot of fun to make, and I use these, of course, everywhere in the house. Kind of when you want to find your cell phone or your keys or whatever, it's a great place to look first. Then I found some other cord that's more of a, I'm going to say this is like a braided nylon cord, and I'll tell you where I got that in a minute. But those kinds of cord, they make a really, really sturdy bowl. And they're shiny fabric, so when you wrap it, it's just got a really, really cute look, and the shine kind of makes it look lots of fun. And I'm going to use this today, actually, sitting here to put my strips in. So I'm going to talk a second about this cord or rope. This is 100 feet of 7/32 inch size Scotty cotton clothesline cord. Now there's another brand, I think it's called Allendale, that I purchased, probably from either Amazon or Home Depot, one of the two. But really good to get clothesline rope because it is braided. Now one of the things about braided cord, and I will pull this out and I'll show you this. Okay, so the difference in some of these cords, and I'm going to pull out a little piece to show you this. This braided cord has this center that you can pull out. I can snip it off, then I can drag this back, and if I want, I can take this little piece now that has almost no substance to it, and I can literally fold it under if I want and start coiling my rope. It gives you something to put underneath, or when you're starting your first circle. I'm gonna start this first circle just to kind of show you this. And you can use a pin, but I'm just gonna hold it up so you can see. So when you start most rope bowls, you coil it. You start it like this, and you're going to always have this side hanging off the end. You see that little bottom piece. Once I go ahead and I'm going to stitch across here once to kind of hold it in place, I can now snip that little piece off really close. And it's before I start going around here, and it's just going to help secure it a little bit. What's nice about that is if you go to join two pieces, because you even have a little piece left over, you've got maybe 15 feet of rope and you don't want to waste it, you can still pull that center core out, cut it, then you've got this little piece that you use really very malleable. Then you can go ahead and put those two pieces together, and you can join them by just literally put them next to each other. And as you wrap fabric around it, you'll never know that you joined two pieces. So it's a really good information to know. It's easy sometimes just to pull that little cord piece out in the center. Now, the other kind of cord that you can get like this rope, there's a company called Mountain Home Thread Company. I believe that's what it's called. Their rope is entirely, it's 100% cotton. There is no core. Now that really, really makes a super sturdy bowl. And I've got some coming. We're going to use it for our retreat next week, but it won't be here until tomorrow. So I didn't have any to bring to show you. But it's a really good cord to use for making any kind of fabric wrapped rope craft. Now today, I had promised I was gonna show you how to make a square bowl, and what I use on the base for the square bowl. So I'm going to show you that. But first I'm going to talk about what do I use on the base. And then I'm going to talk about the strips and cutting the strips. So I found that putting something that's going to give stability, and it gives you a guide. It gives you a guide to start your square bowl. So what I do is I found some Peltex. It's a Pell-On product sold at Joann's. You start with a piece of Peltex. Now this piece is 6.5 inch square. I may not use the whole thing, but I'm going to go ahead and start on a 6.5 inch square. You could start on a 5.5 inch square, which I've done previously. It doesn't really matter. It's based on how big you want your bowl to be. This is going to be a square bowl, and what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to start sewing this to this piece of Peltex, and I'm just going to go back and forth. But because I already have my form, and see what I'm going to do here is you're going to see is I'm going to start sewing this, and I'm going to leave about 1/4 inch all the way around this, so that when I am finished going back and forth this way, I am then going to wrap it around this way. But first I'm going to go ahead and start sewing it doing this. Okay. Now, a lot of people want to know about, do I wrap ahead of time or do I wrap as I go? For a project like this, I liked doing the base plain, because then I could sew, after I got my foundation, I could take a piece of square fabric, sew it right on top of here, and it's going to have this look where I've just zigzagged around the edge right here. And I can do that same thing in the bottom of the square bowl. I rarely leave them empty. Now, the other thing you could do is you could take an embroidery design that you've done on the embroidery machine. When you're finished, cut it nicely, nice neat square, lay it on top of here, and you've got your embroidered design. Some people like to do their embroidery directly on the bowl. There are pros and cons to that. The problem with doing embroidery directly into the bowl is you could have, depending on how dense your stitches are, you could have a lot of breakage. So you may not want that. So I started doing embroidery just on the fabric and then attaching it to the base of the bowl. And when you're going to do that, you also need to do certain things. To the bottom of that fabric, you need to make sure you secure it with something like Wonder Under or Shape Flex. You want some stability. This one I did not use Shape Flex on. And you can see those little bubbles right here around the embroidery. It's because I hadn't secured that really, really well with something like Shape Flex. Then if you do that, and then you put your heat and bond under the base, you can attach it to this and it'll work perfect. You learn those things as you go, but as you make the more projects you make, the more things you'll learn about what works really good and what. Plus you can watch other videos too to learn how to do things, especially if there's a specific area that you have questions about. Okay, so enough about that. I'm going to talk one more about strips. When you cut strips, don't cut on the straight of grain. Lots of people ask, what's the big advantage? When you cut on the straight of grain, like on this piece of Kaffe fabric, and if I cut this right here, right across there, yep, it's got a really cute zigzag design. The problem is all those little ravels. As you start doing those ravels, they will become a real pain in the rear to wrap around the rope. So I take this 6-inch strip that I bought a roll of 6-inch strips, and I'm going to cut it from this corner at the top down to the bottom of this corner at the bottom. That's not much on the bias, but it's enough to give it stretch and it'll work. That's what I did with these strips, and I'm using those today. It's got enough of a stretch that it's going to work great to wrap around this rope. So today, that's what I'm going to do, but I'm not going to wrap anything until after I get the base formed. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you that I'm leaving this little tail hang here, that I have the little flimsy part, and I'm going to leave this tail. I'm going to just start it where it's about 1/4 inch from the edge. And I'm going to lay this down here, and I'm going to fold it back. this direction like this. This is what I'm going to be doing. So as I fold this, I'm going to now take this over here to the machine. I'm just using my fingers to kind of hold it. I'm using a zigzag stitch. My stitch width is about 4, and you can make it wider, but I'm going to start with about between 4 and 4.4, and your stitch length will be at 1.8. Now I'm going to go ahead and start here, and I'm using variegated, or I mean a dark thread on purpose so you can see this, but I'm also going to be covering up the base of this so it won't matter. Okay, when you get to the end of your first row, you want your needle to be on this left side, because I'm going to turn this around this way. And I'm going to come back one more time, and the reason I'm going to come back is because I want to pull this down this side. Okay, so I'm always leaving my needle down on the side that I'm turning it, so that this next time, as I form this next row, I put this presser foot down. Then I stop. I flip it around, and I'm going to put my presser foot down again. And you sometimes have to push this through a little bit to get it started, because depending on your presser foot and how far you've gone up, then you're just going to go ahead and keep going back and forth. And I'm going to stop after this row and show you how much room I'm leaving on the edges. Okay, so the purpose of this is I'm going back and forth. I'm going to try and end at both the bottom and the top. I'm going to try and end right there, right at the top. I want this to be as close as I can every single time to that top. And the bottom, I'm going to want it to be as close as it can be to down here. And you'll see this one here is a little bit shorter. But it won't matter. If it's off by just 1/8 of an inch or so, it's not really going to matter, because when we're done, I'm going to go around the outside of this with the rope, and it's going to cover up any of this Peltex. But I'm going to keep going back and forth all the distance of this to make the base of my square bowl the size I want. So I'm going to continue on with that, and each time I turn it, I'm trying to keep this top edge lined up as close as I can, leaving room for one more round on the sides. So now you can see that I've basically just gone back and forth, and you might have to change your stitch to be a little bit wider while you're doing this base, especially if you're using this cotton cord. It is a little bit wider and it won't hurt anything. And if you're using the same color as the robe, of course, none of the stitches will show. But I'm going to cover this up, like I said, with a piece of fabric when I'm done. But now I'm going to keep, I've got this little ridge around here. Now I'm going to start going down this side, and I'm literally going to wrap this right around this way, and I'm going to zigzag to what I've previously stitched, and then go down this side. And the whole purpose is that little edge is just going to give me a lip to follow this as I make one round around this base. Whatever's left, I'll trim off when I'm done. Now, before I go, I should tell you about corners. When you get to the corners, you need to push this way just a little bit to give yourself, you want the corner to be square. So if you just keep going like this, it's going to end up being really super rounded. So you need to just push it 1/8 of an inch or so this direction, so that when I sew it, it's going to try to keep it as square as possible until we get to the end. Otherwise, if you kept making a big bowl, eventually it'd just be round. So we want to just square it up with just a little bit of a push right there. Leave your needle down when you turn the corner and just give it a slight little push up. Again, you're just trying to get it a little bit of 1/8 of an inch. If you have one of those little rubber tipped stilettos, I don't use my scissors because I will hit the scissors and break them. So if you've got a little rubber tipped stiletto, you can push it up against this edge to kind of help hold it there, and then away you go. Okay, so now I've gone around one time all the way around the side. Now what I'm going to do next is I'm going to trim off this little piece on the back. I just had that little piece hanging over there just to kind of give it a little bit of extra stitches as I was starting it. So I've trimmed that off. I'm not going to worry about these little corners because they are going to get covered up. And then when you're done, you have this nice flat bottom that if you want, you can actually glue or sew on a piece of cork or a piece of vinyl, or you can just put another piece of fabric on the bottom. A lot of people will use felt as well, so it doesn't really matter what you put. But I will often, before I start up the sides of the bowl, I will attach whatever I'm going to attach here in front, and I will attach whatever I'm going to put on the back, and I will do that ahead of the time before I start up the sides of the bowl. Today, I've got to see which fabric I have here, and so I may pause in a few moments and do this. So I'm going to go ahead and start one more round around. I've gone around one time around the edges. I'm going to go around one more time, and then I'm going to stop. Okay, so I've gone twice around the sides. Now I'm going to start going up the side of the bowl. But typically, before I would do anything else, this is where I am going to cover up whatever I'm going to put on the bottom. I'm going to use my hot glue gun, or I'm going to just do a zigzag stitch and put down a piece of cork. Hot glue is okay. You just have to be careful you don't get it too big a clumps. So I'm going to generally use... I usually zigzag mine around the edge. So I have this piece, I can trim it while it's upside down and get the size exactly the size I want. And I can sew it down, and I'm going to put the bottom on first before I put on the top. And the reason that is because that way, any stitches I have, even if I do a straight stitch sewing on the bottom, when I start putting on the top, it's going to cover up. When I put the top piece on, it's going to cover up any of those stitches if I didn't want them to show. Okay, so now that we finished this base, we have the bottom and it's got the shape flex showing. What I did is I took a piece of fabric and I put on the back of it SF 101, Shape Flex 101, and I put this on the back first, and that's going to give this fabric some stability. Okay, then I take, and on top of the Shape Flex, I put the Heat and Bond, because I want to iron this base to this like so, and that's going to be the bottom. Now I could have done this, I could have used vinyl. If you're using vinyl, of course you can't iron it on, so you're just going to sew it on. But if you're going to use felt or something else, you can use the Heat and Bond and put that on there. Anything obviously that's going to melt, you don't want to do that. So this could go on the bottom, or I could use a felt or something like that and put it on last. And I could take this piece now and I could iron it here on the top, and then I'm going to zigzag around the edge, and this is going to be the center of the top of my bowl. Okay, so now what we've done is, with my little helper here, Sammy, thank you, we've put this fabric here on the inside of the bowl, and I am going to go around here and zigzag, just a real small zigzag around the edge, and then I'm going to start up the sides of the bowl. So I will just go around the edge. I'm changing my zigzag stitch down to a little bit smaller width of stitch, and I'm just going to go around the edge. Now you'll notice I've got all this cord here. I'm just going to keep it out of the way as I continue to go around, and then I'll just unwind it when I'm done. Okay, so now you don't actually have to stop here and cut your cord, but or cut the thread, but I'm gonna show you that now I've stitched this around the edges, and it's just gonna securely hold that down as I continue going up the side of the bowl. Okay, so now you don't actually have to stop here and cut your cord, but or cut the thread, but I'm gonna show you that now I've stitched this around the edges, and it's just gonna securely hold that down as I continue going up the side of the bowl. You can do it when you're all finished with the shape of the bowl, but I like to do it as I go just because it's easier to manipulate getting this rope under the presser foot while it doesn't have all the sides on it. So I prefer to do that at that point. But now I'm going to start the shape to go up the sides of the bowl. So I'll talk to you about that in just a second. We'll get it started here. Change my stitch back up to 4. I'm using actually about a 4.2, 4.4 here. Okay, so now I'm around this corner, and now I'm going to tip it up the side. Your first time around, you always want to go at about a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to do that 2 times around at 45 degrees, and then I'm going to change to going straight up at 90 degrees. Okay, so now I've gone around twice at a 45-degree angle, and now I'm going to tip it all the way up the side here. Now, some machines, it's a little more difficult to get it up the side, but it may not look down by your machine that it's going right up that side, but it is. Okay, so now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to go straight up the side here, and I've got this tipped up at 90 degrees. I'm just going to keep my fingers here to kind of help control it, and I'm constantly keeping my cord over here at the side. I could start wrapping, but I'm going to go once around at this 90-degree angle, and then I'll show you what I'm going to do to wrap. Okay, so now at any point along here, you could start wrapping up the side of the bowl. So I'm going to sit this bowl here just for a second, hold this right here. I'm going to take my strips out of the bowl. I'm going to lay a couple of them here just so that I can separate them while I have my fingers working properly. And then I will show you what I'm doing with wrapping. Okay, so now to start wrapping, you can wrap anywhere you want. You just don't want to start on the very, very corner because it's a little more difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this off to the side just a little bit. You put your fabric strip, cut on the bias. I'm putting it down at the side, and I'm going to wrap this. And you'll see I'm going to fold a little bit of this over. It won't matter. I'm going to fold it over. And I'm going to wrap it around. I'm going to put a wonder clip in here just to hold it on there for a second. I'm going to put a second wonder clip just to kind of help hold it. And then I'm just going to wrap this on the bias. And you'll notice that I can literally stand up and I can walk anywhere that I need to go to make this as far. And I'm going to wrap this because I'm going to need several pieces of this. So when I get my first piece wrapped, my first strip, I'm going to use steal one of these wonder clips. I'm going to put it here. Now I'm going to stand up. And I'm going to continue wrapping. I'm going to put the wonder clip back on here. And I'm just putting a little bit of tension on the rope and wrapping the fabric around. It won't matter if you get any kind of little tiny, like see how I let that go? You just grab it and you pull it back, and that's why you want it cut on the bias. Gives you a little more stretch. And I can literally go clear out the door with this if I need to. But in today's case, I'm not going to because I don't have all my wonder clips here. Here we are, back at the bowl. I've wrapped only 2 strips of this partial piece of fabric strip that I had. And you could actually do them all, but I'm gonna just do 2 at a time here. And I'm gonna start showing you, go back up here, turning my bowl 90 degrees here. Okay, so I'm going to keep wrapping. I stopped here just because I had run out of strips, and I'm going to put this little piece of wrap it around here. Once I've got it wrapped around and I put my wonder clip on, it's not going to go anywhere. Okay, so we're going to continue here, and I'm going to put at least 2 rows all the way around of wrapped fabric, and then I'm going to do plain fabric, plain rope again, sorry. Okay, so then to finish up your bowl, deciding what you want to do with your flower and your loop. Some people just put decorative buttons on, all kinds of different things you can do, but making the flower makes these really look cute, especially when you're using really bright colored fabrics. Then when you're finished, you can actually do the bottom as the same time you're doing this piece. But you can if you're going to do any piece last, this would be the one you could do. You could put a piece of vinyl or felt. You can hot glue it on the bottom. Just put a real thin bead of hot glue. That way you don't have to try and get this on the ironing board. But that's what I'll do with this piece, is I'll either put a piece of vinyl or a little piece of felt, and I'll just hot glue around the edge. I'll round the corners a teeny bit to make sure they don't catch on things. And then the bowl is finished. These make great gifts, and they're so much fun to use. Giving them as birthday, get well, all kinds of fun little things. A lot of people put labels on the bottom with their own label that they have made. They buy them on Etsy or somewhere. So lastly, I want to tell you just a little bit, if you are interested in getting freebies, Christy, my daughter, who owns the shop, RebsFabStash, on YouTube, she has a live video every Wednesday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, and she gives away 2 to 3 things every single week. So they're usually about an hour long, but if you want to win free stuff, tune in to RebsFabStash on YouTube and see her Wednesday live videos and get some free stuff. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, please post them and I'll try and get to them as soon as I can. Thank you. Okay, so if you wanted to do an oval bowl, what you're going to do is you don't need the Peltex, but you need to figure out, okay, I want to start with about, your first one, do about 6.5 inch or 5.5 inch piece. You're going to sew 2 strips together. So I'm going to sew this. If I can get it going here. The advantage of having it to the Peltex is it'll move. There we go. So you could start with a little piece of Peltex underneath here, but you don't have to do an oval bowl. Okay, and almost always you're going to be feeding off with your cord coming off to the right. But because I'm backwards today, okay, so you're basically going to start your oval bowl like this. You sew right down the center between two pieces. Now I'm going to start wrapping like this. And I'm just going to keep going. And I'm going to make the base as big as I want. So I'm just going to keep going around the side here. And you'll have to pause it, stop, and turn your, especially the first couple times when you're getting it started, you'll have to stop, raise your presser foot to get it going the right direction. Okay, so I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to make the base of this bowl the size I want for the base of my oval bowl. So if you want a good sized oval bowl base, you're going to make it about this big. And if you want a smaller, you're just going to, at what the point you decide you want to start curving it up the sides, you're going to have to play with it a few times to get the length and the size exactly the way you want. But that's basically how you start it. You just keep going around. You can either wrap from the beginning, wrap as you go, wrap here and there, whatever you want to do. But that's how you start an oval bowl. Just fold it in half and away you go. I'm going to end this just in a second, right? So you're basically going to keep going this direction till you're ready to start up the sides of your bowl. And then when you start, you're going to do the same thing. You're going to tip it up at a 45-degree angle, go around at least twice, and then you can tip it up at a 90-degree angle. And it may not look on your machine like you're at that angle, but it will come out that way. So keep going, and happy bowling.